America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I just want to start our first meeting with our new superintendent, Dr. Girizzo, with a very big welcome. You're finally here. We're very excited that you're here. Happy to have you next to me here. Welcome, and thank you for coming and joining our Vikings.
And thank you for having me.
I think we're going to start with the swearing in of the superintendent. We did do this Monday, but we thought couldn't resist the photo op of doing it again. So.
Should we stand in the center?
Yes.
We just want to make sure everybody knows.
The more the merrier.
Rizzo,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of superintendent
of Superintendent
of the North Shore Central School District
of the North Shore Central School District
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Yay! Excellent. It is official, even though it was official Monday. It's really official now.
They said make sure before you sign anything you do this on Monday.
Right. Okay. All right, so we'll start with the report.
Okay, so that's me.
That's you. We're going to
Okay,
start with the
so-
report of the superintendent. Nope, this button. There you go,
Thank
now
you.
you're on.
Okay, great. So,
Thank you, Herman.
it is really an absolute honor to be here, seated, and now singularly focused on the North Shore community. I would like to thank the board for your confidence in me. I really appreciate it. Your confidence in my leadership, and I look forward to a fruitful partnership on behalf of all of our students, faculty, administration, and staff. This week has really been an excellent entry into the district for me, and we are definitely moving the work forward. Before I update the board, I want to specifically thank Olivia and Rob for their truly fine support of my transition. And both have been remarkable supports to this system, and I especially thank Rob for your excellent leadership that you provided as acting superintendent since July 1st. It was a really smooth landing for me, so I really appreciate it. And finally, there are absolutely no words to convey how wonderful our district clerk, Betty Campy, is and has been. So thank you to all of you. So, we have a very full agenda already, so I'll fully engage with the board, the district staff, the community, to shape a set of short, medium, and long-term goals over the next several months. And I'll be reaching out to connect with community members, with faculty, with parents, with students to begin interviews related to my entry plan, so be on the lookout for that. We have a brand new website if you haven't seen it, so please take a few minutes to look at that as well. And when you're there, you can take a look. I have a new blog. It's called Viewpoints of a Viking, and it's musings about all things of the Viking Nation. So it's right on our homepage. And you could also follow me on Twitter, where I'm keeping everybody updated and connecting 140 characters at a time here. A few updates include the following. We are very nearing opening day. Next Tuesday, we'll welcome our new teachers back for orientation. All of our staff will return on Wednesday, September 6th, and the board should have received invitations to both of those events thus far. If you haven't, please let me know. This past Tuesday, we received assessment data for grades 3 through 8 ELA and math assessments, so it's definitely too soon to make any meaningful conclusions from the data, but the principals and directors under Rob Klebicki's direction are beginning the process of that data analysis, so these data can be used to inform instruction. It's a little tricky to draw conclusions. We have a lot of kids who opt out, so it's hard to make comparisons and make sense of what they mean. But to the extent that we can use what we have there to make instruction stronger, we most certainly will. I'll be prepared to present on district-wide student achievement to the board sometime in the fall, and my report will include information related to the 3 through 8 math and ELA assessments, Regents exams, advanced placement, and international baccalaureate outcomes. So stay tuned for that. We'll start collecting that information. Also, please note that pursuant to the board's last meeting, Rob Klabicki and I will be meeting with a representative from Preventure on Monday. And the purpose of the meeting is so that he and I can become more informed about the program, its objectives, and then to seek specific answers related to data privacy. We'll report back to the board on September 14th, but in the meantime, if there are specific questions that the board would like me to ask or information that you would like to learn, all I would ask that you do is shoot me that information, and we'll make sure that we get that to you. Go ahead, Mrs. Russo.
So I have spoken to some psychologists who are residents in our district.
Yes.
And they would have come to this meeting tonight if Preventure were on the table. And one person in particular has raised significant concerns about the lack of data and the lack of information that we have about the program. I have some concerns which I've expressed at a number of meetings. I also have some concerns from a legal perspective. More importantly, my concerns about labeling children. I would like you to meet with the resident of our district who is a PhD and is a certified CBT person. I would like us to look into alternatives such as CBT workshops that would be given in health class across the board rather than singling out students. And I would like that consideration to be given that we would have people who are actually trained and certified in CBT rather than getting a watered down version through the Preventure program, which singles out and labels, could potentially label certain individual students. Almost every college campus has CBT workshops with their students. My own children have participated in those campus CBT workshops. They have found the tools that I've given them for dealing with stressful situations and anxiety very, very helpful. And I would think with Dr. Berliner on the board, the Salzman Center at Hofstra is one of the leading places for CBT therapy. It's where many of the psychotherapists in the district have, on Long Island, have trained. It's known for that. Dr. Berliner also has connections with Northwell Health. I think the concept of training students how to deal with anxiety, with stressful situations, with different issues is conceptually a great idea. I just don't know that Preventure is the best vehicle, and I would like to see us be more informed as to alternatives to that program.
Okay, that's great. So if you, so after the meeting, if you get me that person's name, I will contact them directly, and I'm happy to do that.
Peter, if you'd like,
Yes, sir.
if you would like some expertise from Northwell, I will be in touch with them again and ask them for that expertise, and we can make use of that.
That'd be terrific as well. So when I meet with them on Monday, it's really to learn what is, because I was certainly not involved in the planning of this, nor was Rob Klabicki. So if he and I are going to lead wherever this work leads to, he and I need to be able to speak from a place of good information from it. And then we also have a new principal at the middle school who also was not involved in this planning. So really, we want to just start to dig into what it is about the program, get questions answered, bring them back to all of you, and then we can make a determination about a recommendation to move forward. You're welcome.
I just would encourage everyone to really follow through and ask those specific questions. I heard the concerns
Yep.
of my colleagues last time, but I think we ought to be very specific in what we provide for you so you can follow through on that information.
That would be really helpful. So next, in the ensuing weeks, I'll be working on a draft of the 17-18 goals for the district, bringing that to the board. So obviously that normally comes a little bit sooner than September, but the circumstances are a little bit different this year. We're meeting with the administrators we met with the administrators in early July. We're meeting with them again next week. We'll starting to shape those priorities for the board. We'll bring something to you for consideration in September.
Okay.
Okay. One of the primary focuses we'll have this year on the shared valued outcomes, and our goal is to plan a cohesive K-12 skill progressions in 2 areas. The work that's been done with the SVOs has been largely foundational over the past several years, and it's really a good time to start to bring more unity to the implementation of them across the district. So looking forward to that. I do know that the board is going to we'll have a discussion tonight related to potential bond work, so I'm going to hold off on anything related to that until you have your discussion, and then I can participate more fully. On Tuesday, I toured construction sites with Olivia and John Hall, and I'm pleased with the progress that's been made. So if you look around and you're driving around the buildings, it looks like how could these buildings possibly be ready for the opening of school? And in every school year, and in every school that I've ever worked in, we've had those same conversations, and miraculously, they always seem to come together. So I feel confident that we'll have the same experience here. And then yesterday, I spent some time with Don Lang on the athletic fields. So had some fun on the new cart, driving around the fields in the back. Got to see some volleyball and some soccer. And I'm going to try to get out and see some football tomorrow, so that's quite fun. But I did want to address on a more serious note, there's obviously been a lot of media attention on training protocols in light of recent local events around football training. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to make sure I assure the board and the entire community that our training protocols in North Shore involve strength training in the weight room. And when that happens, it is supervised by our coaching staff and an athletic trainer. Under no circumstances do students engage in any kind of training by carrying heavy logs or any other objects. So that's not a practice that happens here. And I wanted the board to just rest assured that that was the case. So we are looking forward to a great fall season where our students can be competitive, but also more importantly, have a lot of fun on the field as well. I think I'm lastly now getting there. I did want to briefly address the events from Charlottesville, Virginia. Yes, sir.
To the right.
To the right?
Yeah.
That's better. Okay,
Yeah, that's
great.
better.
Sure. So I did want to address the events from Charlottesville, Virginia. So obviously, there is no room for hate or bias or bigotry or racism anywhere, but most especially in our schools. And what happened there was completely unnerving and is deserving of our attention. Our principals and our administrators will be back next week, and will plan to speak about a systemic and systematic plan to use these events as teachable moments to address students about acceptance, about unity, and about cohesion as a human race. That will be the message that we'll be bringing to our faculty and our students in the fall. Last year, you will likely recall the situation that happened at the middle school where we had a swastika drawn on the wall. The middle school did begin to address this issue last spring. We have brought Rob Dennis up to speed on this issue. That has been referred to the Nassau County Police, and then we'll we'll continue to build on that work into the upcoming school year as part of this larger conversation. So I think it is it's a much more important conversation that we need to have about all people to move the conversation forward. Okay. September 16th, please mark your calendars, homecoming. This year the carnival will begin at 10:30 a.m., so please don't miss your chance to dunk our new middle school principal, Rob Dennis, who's being a really good sport, or selfies with the new Vikings superintendent. And it will likely be a more literal translation of that, more to come. So this year, the full parade is being replaced by a mini parade, and then we'll play Carl Place at 2 p.m. And it should be a really terrific day for everybody. I'm looking forward to it. So we have a mailer going out next week, so keep your eyes open. So lastly, and in summary, I just want to let the board know how, and the community, it really is such an honor to be your Viking superintendent. It's been 6 months of planning and 6 months of preparation, and I've been really looking forward to it. And it's really nice to be here, hang my hat in a singular place, and I'm really looking forward to a great year of teaching and learning with all of you. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Rob as well for stepping in and being, I know I've thanked you in texts and emails, but thank you once again. So we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes from July 5th, 2017. Could I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. I asked Dave to prepare a report from the construction steering meeting because they at the meeting spoke about the bond and some changes in our planning going forward. So Dave, thank you for preparing. And that's why normally we put the committee reports at the end, but we didn't want anybody in the public to miss our it's not really a discussion, it's just a report on what happened at construction steering and how we've changed the path forward a bit.
Okay. At our last public meeting, the Construction Steering Committee presented a plan and a recommendation for holding a December 2017 vote on an infrastructure bond, which would include security enhancements, bathroom, locker room renovations, HVAC work, and other repairs to the 6 buildings. The committee considered additional projects related to curriculum, but we felt it was premature to include this in the bond as we wanted more study and we wanted to garner more input and interaction with the community in determining that path. So we proposed a bifurcated bond with 2 independent votes, infrastructure in December and curriculum at some point not long thereafter. The board as a whole discussed, agreed, and we resolved to get to work at our next construction steering committee meeting to develop a timeline, commence the filings, and officially required actions to make that happen. However, as we started putting the wheels in motion, it became clear the bifurcated plan wasn't right. It was confusing to split the district's needs in 2 parts, created duplication of effort and costs, and didn't involve all stakeholders in the process fully. Further, our new superintendent, Peter, has a lot of work ahead of him as he's transitioning to our district, and to ask him to direct this much focus on passing part 1 of a 2-part bond need as his first order of business didn't seem like the right priority. Therefore, we discussed with Peter and Olivia in advance of our August 1st Construction Steering Committee meeting, and with their help and their expertise, as well as John Hall, the architects, the engineers, we constructed a timeline that accomplishes all of our goals, which are funding the most important challenges facing the physical plant, involving the community in the process, maintaining a continuity of debt without spikes, and giving the superintendent time to acclimate before focusing on the bond. This will result in a single bond vote in late 2018 containing both the infrastructure and the curriculum components, and it'll result in a thorough process with the community, which will be shepherded by the new superintendent.
I don't think we really determined the timeline, and I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. I want the board to be aware. I certainly have no problem you putting off the bond, but I think the board should be aware of the pros and the cons to that. If we had a vote in 28, this year, right, at the end of 2017, December 2017, I was under the impression from our prior meetings, and I want to correct the record, that we would be able to commence construction in the summer of 2018. That is not feasible. The time that we would, except for maybe security, the time where we could actually commence construction would be the summer of 2019. So we're essentially losing the summer of 2018 either way. If we put the bond forward in October of 2018, we still have the possibility of doing construction in the summer of 2019, and you could start borrowing the money sooner. If we leave it to December of 2018, you will lose the possibility of doing construction in the summer of 2019 under the bond. In lieu of doing that, if we want to do the bond vote either in December or January or February of 2019, December 2018, January, February 2019, what Olivia proposed would be that perhaps we would like to do some of the work under the capital bonds and other construction work that we could fund through the budget, because you would not be paying the interest. So the money that would be going for the interest would be utilized to do projects that are scheduled, such as air conditioning, large spaces in the buildings, which is really should be a priority. But I think the board should be aware that the engineers and architects were concerned. You will have an increase in the interest rates, and you will have an escalation in pricing that our cost estimator will have to put in if we do not commence work in the summer of 2019. There are pros and cons, I think, going both ways as interest rates go up, as Olivia pointed out. Less school districts do the work. Maybe the bids become more competitive, so maybe not you're paying more, but you're certainly going to see an increase, I think a regular increase, that's what all the economists are forecasting, in the interest rates, and that is going to be something we should be considering, not just automatically saying we'll have the bond vote in December of 2018, because if we did it in October of 2019, we could utilize the summer of 2019, and you do not click into the interest rates, you actually start drawing down on the bond to do the work. So I think there's a larger discussion. The problem with October is that your organizational meeting, you essentially have to have your secret in place and voted on. It's ambitious, and it's a tight timeline, and I'm more concerned that we spend the money prudently, and that we look at all our curriculum needs, so that we don't just do things for the sake of doing things and have to go back towards it. I always thought that this was an ambitious project, but we were trying to capture the lower interest rates for those things that really need to be done. So I think this is a discussion that's going to be had with the superintendent and the board, and further discussion amongst the construction steering committee as to timing, and with Olivia as to what projects that we can fund through the capital reserves for the summer of 2019, because we certainly don't want to lose a summer where we could do construction work.
Right, so
Can I just correct a couple? There's a lot to unpack there. Got a lot of good thoughts in there. But just to clarify, whether we vote in October of 18 or December of 18, based on the bond council's timeline, nothing can be done in September of 2019. That's too early. If we had held the vote this December, we'd be able to get it done for work in that year.
No, but they can do the work the summer of 2019 if we do it in October.
My understanding is that's not accurate, but I don't know, Olivia.
That was-
That's what we discussed at construction steering.
I thought in the
Yeah, but-
construction steering
but
committee,
The
yeah.
state review process is taking about 26 to 40 weeks, and Peter, please.
No, I just went
Yes,
through it.
yes.
It's absolutely true.
It is so long that even if we vote in October, it will be it will be impossible, because it means we'll be bidding around May or April of 2018. No, 2019.
2019, because you would have the vote in 2018.
Anytime
Yes.
that you get into 19, very close to the summer, it's very difficult to get contracted. Or if you get contractors at all, it is those ones that you don't want to do your project. So it's always better to bid your projects around early spring or January, February. Then you get good pricing, then you get good contractors. So that October, even October doesn't seem, in my view, it's too ambitious.
Well, but I do think the board should be aware that there's a cost factor.
Yeah.
I think the reason that we kind of prepared this report in this way, rather than say October or December, was to say, as I said, late 2018. I think the details, the actual date of the vote seems premature. I think the
Right.
larger sketches are, we're not going ahead with half of the work or half of what
Right.
the board feels is the work in 3 or 4 months from now, that we're going to have a larger process to, as you said, identify all of those things, so we make sure that what we spend is not wasteful and is not unnecessary, but reflects what the community and what our students need, and that roughly, if we have that at the end of 2018, it will allow us to complete bond work that we've already funded through the end of this year, which has already been budgeted. The year 2018, 2019, work will continue through the capital reserve, and then in 2019, 2020, we can work on approved new bond-funded projects.
Well, 2018, we will not be doing bond work. 2018, the summer of 2018, you're going to have a year, no matter what, where there's not going to be a lot of work
From
going on, because,
correct. That's
right?
gotta be the capital.
So it would be the summer of 2019, we're talking about whether we do the capital reserve projects or whether we do the bond work. I just wanted to have, and we had this discussion at construction steering, obviously there have been discussions which I was not a party to subsequent to the meetings, but that's another story. But I just wanted to make clear that we were having discussion at the construction steering committee whether to do October or December, and we were going to have that discussion as a board. I don't think 3 people on the board should be making those decisions. I would rather that we had a discussion, and your presentation indicated that it would be December 2018. Maybe that's what it should be, and that's fine.
Just go back.
But I just want to,
You, it says late 2018. To me, October 2018 and December 18 both reflect the words late 2018.
Okay.
I just want to clarify.
Then let's move on.
Well, I think the bottom line is we should not go forward without the full input of the new superintendent. That's going to take some time, and it needs that time to get up to speed, and we need that time to make the best decisions. The downside of this, and I think we still have to wait, is that there will not only be one interest rate increase, my guess is there will be multiple interest rate increases, and that will have an adverse impact. I think we just have to do the best we can and go forward and try and make the most informed decision ultimately that we can make.
Okay, let's,
So with the, so what we are in the process of doing right now is developing RFPs for pre-construction services. So that will, because I think what is needed here in order to make the best decision possible for how we're going to move forward is to have an architect and construction manager services on the pre end to help us sort out what do we need for safety and security, what do we need for infrastructure, what do we need for to support the program and the athletic program, and then how that all comes together allows us to make decisions about scope and what we can afford and what we can't afford and how we might want to phase those things in. And you're right, there are some projects, any multi-trade project that we submit to state ed is going to be in that 26 to 40 week span. There are cases where you can do if there's any single trade work, that certainly can get into the queue and approved a lot faster. So I think we just need to, I think I'm pleased that we'll have a little bit of space here to just get ourselves on a master plan and then figure out how to implement it.
Okay.
So we'll get those RFPs out as soon as possible. Yep, and then we'll interview them and get some involvement from the board.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. You're welcome.
All right, let's move on to the comments from the public. So if there are any comments from the public, if you'd come up and give us your name and town of residence, we welcome comments from the public.
Hi, Lisa Vizza, Glen Head. I just wanted to welcome the new superintendent.
Thank you.
To your first official Board of Education meeting. Welcome, we're so
Thank you.
happy you're here. I also represent the coordinating council of the parent organizations, and I will speak for them, and they welcome you too.
Thank you very
And
much.
we'll be meeting with you in September. at
Yes, you
our-
are. We have a whole string of meetings
We have
scheduled
a whole
already.
agenda, so thank you
Thank you
and
very
welcome.
much. It's nice of you to come.
Anyone else? I don't hear you yet.
Not ready. Okay. Tim Madden,
Yep.
Seacliff. I'm just with the bond timeline. I'm just wondering why you're not considering the spring of 2018 for a vote. Does that not give enough time? Is there something about putting a bond up for a vote in the spring that's less advantageous to it being passed?
I think I don't want to speak for, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I think that we believe that we need a good amount of time to engage, to not only have the new superintendent get to know the district, but also to engage the public, to engage someone to help us do that, and then to engage the public in the discussions like we did in the last bond, which you so kindly pointed out at the last meeting that we needed to do that. So.
Okay. Just the other thing, I was just going through this, and maybe it's going to come up, but I noticed there wasn't public comment after the action items. But there's one with overages, and I noticed this before. I forget what item it is.
Do you need
Page
on
5.
5 in personnel?
Yeah, on personnel.
On page 5.
Page 5. Now, just for clarification, an overage is that when a teacher is teaching a 6th period, an extra class? And so does that .2 represent 20% of their salary that they would be getting for that class?
It is, Tim. So they, instead of teaching 5 classes, which is the normal teaching load for a teacher, they'll be teaching 6 classes.
So I'm just wondering why the district would make a decision. You know, I know there's some veteran teachers there, and that when you're why not hire a .6 at, I don't know, $75,000, $80,000 a year, as opposed to overages that are going to be, it's going to be significantly higher just because they're of what step level they're at.
Let me explain the overages in this case. The .2 art, I'm going to put aside because that's a separate case. But all of the ones that are .2 in the STEM area, that's the middle school science and math teachers. And because of the schedule in the middle school, periods are 60 minutes long, which ends up being an overage. So if we were to hire a .6 teacher, for example, as you mentioned, it would be the students would have 2 different teachers for the same course to cover that extra amount of time.
So it's not that they are teaching a 5th period, it's just that they are teaching, that they're teaching, the time that they're in the classroom is equivalent to teaching
So we're
6.
teaching an extra period.
So
right?
they're not having additional
No,
students
for the
or
art-
anything like that?
For
Okay.
the art, it is, but not for the middle school math and science,
Okay.
which is the
That-
rest of them.
That makes sense.
Okay.
And I keep coming back to it, I know, but with the athletics attendance policy, I'm just wondering, is that issue being revisited at all? I checked the new website and I noticed that it still says that academic trips are not excused absences. Going through the policy, I also noticed that there is an expulsion policy that was extended into the middle school that had previously not been there, that is there now. And I'm just kind of baffled as to why that was added to the policy when you had, at one meeting, about a dozen parents who showed up, which is not a lot, but 10 of them who said they didn't like the policy. You had other parents who raised the issue, and it just seemed like kind of a doubling down on the policy to extend it into the middle school. And it seemed like you're going to question our policy. Well, what we're going to do is now we're going to extend it even further. And it just seemed like a strange addition to that policy to put it into the middle school.
Yeah. Thank you. I think Joanna wants to make a comment.
It certainly wasn't a doubling down. I think that the concept in moving some responsibility to attend practices was to teach just that concept. In essence, the days that are allowed on top of what is allowed already would necessitate a child missing more than half the season. And we felt that I think that there was some feeling that was unfair to being able to coach those kids. So I think that was, I don't think it was a doubling down at all. We continue to have the conversation about educational trips. We are stuck. I'll tell you, we are very stuck in a situation, and the timing of the trip that you're talking about is right in the middle of the spring season. We're talking about the trip to the Galapagos, I believe, right? That's really.
Well, that's what I had heard about.
So in essence, we spend from the time kids first go into youth programs, teaching them a sense of responsibility and dedication to sport. I think what happens when a child opts to join a varsity team, I think that they have to be prepared to make that obligation to themselves and also to their teammates. And what we have in many situations is our kids who are either very talented players or really kids who are heart and soul of their teams, who in the middle of a season are gone for 10 days. That has impact on the group. And I think it's very difficult for us to weigh the responsibility and the encouragement individually and to the team. And that's where we get stuck in this. This is not a malevolent decision. This is not punishing anyone. This is how do we keep true and teach those things that we really feel in the athletic world important for everyone to learn.
I get it. I know we've had these conversations, and the issue is expulsion. Not that there shouldn't be penalties, or I played varsity sports. I played college lacrosse, and come from a sports culture and understand the importance, and being there for practice. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be penalties. You miss practice, you certainly don't start, and maybe you don't play the next game. There are a lot of other options.
Tim, let me just add, the timing of this specific thing is really right before a playoff situation. And that really complicates the issue for the team concept.
No, I understand it. And just going back to my point that I made the last time is that I think when it's something that affects the academic program, the decision should not be within the purview of an athletics committee that's coming from one particular point of view, and that's my point. And the other issue I wanted to raise with the appeals process is there is a student who sits on that appeals committee, and I could think of many situations where there are going to be privacy issues that a student should not be involved in making that decision. And I don't know whether district lawyers have looked at this policy and whether or not it's appropriate for a student to be involved in deciding whether or not a kid is kicked off of a team. I mean, that just seems strange to me.
So point taken.
That absolutely should not be. What? I agree with Tim. That should not be.
So point taken. We'll have our superintendent review with this and understood. I think Herman wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I think ultimately the discussion shouldn't be so much about penalties, but if it's important for the students to participate in the sport during that period of time, we have an obligation to find alternatives for our students. There really is no substitute for a global experience. And if they're being shortchanged by not being able to go on these trips, there need to be alternatives because the educational benefit is huge. And we should not shortchange really top students from having that opportunity.
And I just wanted to point out that it's not just the Galapagos, it's the international exchange programs. I've had friends whose children who have not played a varsity sport in the spring in order to go be an exchange student in Italy or France. In the winter, it would be for the February break. It would also be the music tour or the Latin trip to Italy, where students have had to choose between a winter sport and going on the trip. And I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just saying it's not one trip. It's a broader question, and if we're going to have a discussion about that, again, I think we need to be fully aware of what the parameters are.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again.
Just real quickly, I couldn't agree with Tim more. Expulsion of a child for pursuing an academic interest seems draconian. North Shore School District is an educational institution, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. With respect to the Preventure program, please keep in mind, this is a small town. Many people who live here work for the district. From what I understand about the program, if you take part in this survey and you're identified to attend workshops, the minute the child is seen walking into or out of that workshop, that person's confidentiality will be breached. To think otherwise, the best word I could describe anybody who thinks otherwise is naive. I don't know what legal counsel has said, but the lawsuits that could hit the district as a result of the breach of confidentiality seem tremendous to me, the possibility of lawsuits. Now, we might win them, okay, but we all lose in the end. The cost, the only people who win will be the lawyers. So if the lawyers are telling you this is okay to do, you might want to talk to a different law firm personally. I can't say enough how the concept of this program just seems totally wrong. What Trustee Russo said makes a ton of sense in terms of have the workshops, make them mandatory for everyone. Nobody loses that way. Nobody gets labeled. Everybody learns. Everybody wins. Please keep that in mind that you look into that further. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Can I have a part two?
Sure. Wait, and then,
Oh, Jeremy. Lisa Vizza, Glen Head. I just want to add on to my peer, Rob. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a state certified school social worker, and I do have concerns about this specific program. I'm glad you're considering it in the context of helping our children deal with anxiety, pressure that they're undergoing. I mean, this school, we're in a very high-performing geographic area. The kids, a lot of them are self-motivated, but there's a lot of stress that goes into being in a place like this. I've spoken to some of my colleagues in the clinical arena, many of them in this district. We're concerned, one of our professional ethics is to do no harm. And I see that there's the potential for some harm that could happen to our children, even though we're very well-meaning in terms of confidentiality. The individuals who Preventure would like to be trained and give the services to the children. I think that there are other programs that have been developed, and there's data to substantiate their effectiveness that have been proven in the United States. I understand Preventure is a Canadian, Australian,
Canadian.
there's Australian data there. And again, I think we could probably do it in a more global way. And I've had some conversations with some other educators, health educators, mental health educators, that we can embed those skills in CBT. We don't have to call it CBT for students, that we can embed into our health classes. We can embed it to phys ed from year to year. I totally believe that health education needs to be embedded in our education, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. It shouldn't just be a freshman year thing. There are a lot of challenges that every year of the adolescent development that occurs that I think these kids need help with. So if you can just consider maybe looking at the health curriculum in a broader way in terms of mental health and how we can embed these programs into our curriculum, the health curriculum from year to year, that might be a better approach. Utilizing programs that are well established and they're valid and have been instituted in other organizations. I think that might be something to investigate further.
And that's really where I was going, Lisa, thank you, was that it
Yeah.
should be part of the health curriculum. So when I talked about not necessarily CBT workshops in and of themselves being held separately, but in the health classes, maybe even having some of those classes or information for parents so that they know that these programs exist and they know what tools are out there, and that when their children go off to college, because not all colleges do a great orientation, that there are things that students can do, there are services they can avail themselves of to deal with these pressures, and I don't think that anyone loses. I mean, I think everyone wins if we do it on a much broader spectrum, because if we think this is going to go away, and I'm very concerned about privacy, and I'm very concerned about the training on this, and I'm very concerned about the lack of data, and certainly there are different factors and different propensities in Australia than they are here. We don't have the matrices, we don't have the information, we're not healthcare providers, we should not be making this decision because that is not our role. There are, beyond the HIPAA, there are other legal concerns. There are thoughts of maybe putting an idea into a child's head based, and who's going to evaluate the questionnaires that these kids are doing. I mean, it goes on, and I did have someone look into this who went into her network, who teaches at the college level, who was no one's heard of it. So
No one
Okay.
has heard of it.
so.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and really the devil is in the details also of how a program like this should be designed, implemented. You know, would you, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but there are people who are specialists in this field who've gone through years and years and years of training and specialized training, PhD, postdoctoral, that work with adolescents, adolescents with substance abuse issues, with social emotional issues, with severe anxiety and OCD. I don't think this venue is the place to provide those services to kids. What I appreciate from our district is that we do care about our kids, and we're actually looking at these programs to help them and maybe assuage the substance abuse that's going on in not just New York, Long Island, but this country. I applaud you for that, and thank you for listening to your fellow board members in the community. But I feel very strongly, and I know as a parent representative, we all feel very strongly. So thank you for taking another look at it, and maybe, you know, we need to survey or speak to our social workers. I'm also concerned about putting our already very busy mental health staff, our school psychologists and our social workers, who I would assume would be part of this initiative, either to supervise it, oversee it. I don't know if their input has been solicited to look at this as well, but I worry about adding to their load when I know they have a very heavy load with CSE, state-mandated social emotional counseling, and just the day-to-day acute things that go on in our elementary, middle, and high schools. So thank you for listening, and thanks for considering it.
Thanks.
Tony, can I just make
Yeah, sure.
So just to summarize, I think it's important. This came up last public session for vote, and I think there were concerns. Other trustees had raised concerns. I had raised some concerns that we weren't necessarily ready for it. So we tabled it to go further, and I think that's a smart move. And I think what we all felt was that we have a new administration coming in. We have new people who are looking at these. We're certainly not ready to proceed. You mentioned many of the questions. There are that many plus 3 times more of not just what this program is about, but how we would implement it in a way that would cover all those concerns and make us feel comfortable, and could we ever get to that point. But I think from a process point of view, just so I'm understanding, the next step is to have Peter and Rob learn more, and then you'll report back and we'll see where we are.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Jerry. Thank you for being patient.
Jerry Romano, Seacliff. Peter, welcome to the neighborhood. Richard, welcome back to school a little early this year. Hopefully it'll be fun. Some of you, or all of you, should know that the North Shore Public Schools are more than $38% more expensive than the average school cost on Long Island. You know that, right? We're 38% more expensive than the Manhasset School District, which is just a 15-minute drive from here, a few miles from here. Why? What am I getting that's 38% more? That's over $3,000 a year out of my pocket, out of everybody in this community's pocket. What's the justification for it? What do I get for it? What do we get for it? How does it help me? Here, I'll give you some more questions. How am I going to sell my house when somebody has a choice to buy a house in Roslyn, Manhasset, Herricks, and they come to North Shore and say, holy crap, look at the school taxes. Why would I buy a house there? That would be my response. That's probably what you would say. Herman, when you were school board president, you told me you needed the money to have great schools because it affects property taxes. How does it affect property taxes when it's so far out? Not 10% more, but so far out that it's beyond comprehension. What am I, tell me, give me something that's like 1% more. It's worth what are you doing that's worth 1% more? And we'll build up to 38%.
I don't have an answer for you.
Who knows?
Yeah, I can't.
You're spending our money. You have a fiduciary responsibility to know how you're spending our money, all of you. You don't get to sit there and say, I don't know.
Well, I can't give you a comparison of 38% more. I can tell you that we have good schools. We also spend a lot of money in special education, that you can't compare our special education dollars to the dollars that are spent in Manhasset.
So they're spending $20 million a year on special education in Manhasset?
I think, Jerry, you're entitled to a specific answer. You've asked a question. We will get back to you. What goes into funding the schools is more than just the residential base. There's also a commercial base. Let us give you an answer.
No, but it's the overall number. We're not talking residential, what the state gives you. We're talking overall number. I've looked at all the school districts, 120 of them across Long Island, what they all, I could send you the spreadsheet. I took Newsday's number, I put them into a spreadsheet with formulas. It wasn't rocket science. Olivia could probably do it in about a second and a half, and certainly a lot faster than me on a spreadsheet. It doesn't make sense. Something's not right. Because I would say, why do I need any of you? Let's get Manhasset to come in here, run our school district, and give everybody in the school district back $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 a year, depending on what they're paying. Right? Why do we need you? Don't need the school board, don't need a superintendent. We could clear everybody out and just let us be a subset of Manhasset. Roslyn is $34,000 a year student. That's $4,000 less. That's significant. Herrick's is the same in Manhasset. They're not crappy schools. In fact, if you look at the numbers, and I wouldn't use test scores alone, if you look at the numbers, you'd say we should be less than Manhasset, not more, because they have better SAT scores, and across the board, their region scores are better than North Shore's. Across the board. So when you get back to me with a really, really, really good reason, not just to me, tell the community. Put it in your next mailing and say, here's why we're more money. Because otherwise, you shouldn't be taking it from us. There's no justification for it if you can't justify it. Isn't that fun, Peter? Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Part 2. How many bond issues have we had in the last 10 years? How many times have we replaced the roofs and boilers? I moved on to a new topic, but it's money, okay? We've had, I don't know how many different bond issues. We had one a few years ago, we had one after that, we have another one coming up, and we're replacing stuff. Where's the timeline on what we bought? Like this bond, like if I put a roof on my house, I knew I paid a certain amount of money for it, and if I borrowed the money, I would have paid it off in a certain amount of time. Do you have that data?
Of course we do. We had one bond in the time that I've been on the board. It was a 19.6 bond. And I'm going into my 6th year. So we haven't had bond after bond after bond. We're discussing another bond.
No. We voted on a bond last year, didn't we?
No.
2 years ago?
No, 4 years ago,
All right.
but it was to replace a prior bond before that. You are correct. It did not come up when you were on the board, but when we did the 19.6, right, another bond was retiring, and that was coming in. We had a large bond back, I would say Katie was maybe in 1st grade, 2nd grade. It was a big bond. We expanded the schools. We expanded 2000, thank you. We expanded Glen Head Middle School. We redid the wings at Seacliff, right?
All right, but let's not get into the details of that now.
But you know, since I'm in the district, we've had 2 bonds, and this would be the 3rd bond.
So my question is, you're running somewhat of a business, okay? I paid for something, all right? I paid for a roof. How long does the roof last? If I paid $500,000 for a roof, does it last 5 years, 10 years? Does the bond align, the payment of the bond align with the depreciation of the roof? Right? Make sense? Okay. Are we replacing that roof again already? Did it not last? Is it a new project?
I understand the framework of your question. I think as a taxpayer, we're all here, we're taxpayers as well, have a right to ask all those specific questions. I think any specific question can be answered. The larger question, or at least the larger point you're trying to get us to say, can't be answered because it is only about the details. So for example, the roofs have a 20-year life. I was on the roof last week surveying the roof work. I took some cool pictures of this. You can see what they look like. And as Olivia told me, the roofs last 20 years. That's the base. Well, 21. And then you're hoping to get 5 or 6 more. So as we look at those roofs and see what the condition is of them, are we getting our money's worth? That's a very fair question that has to be answered yes, or else there's a problem. But that roof is within its life, is not being replaced or refunded. So it's specific questions versus the larger.
So the specific question is, for the existing bonds that we have, what are we paying for? Where are we in the life cycle of paying down those bonds? Are we now about to go finance and replace things that we're still paying for? Is one of my concerns. Okay, and I'm guessing none of you know that.
The answer to that would be no.
No.
What's that?
The answer to that would be no, because the way the debt service is structured is when the bond retires, right, when you complete the work, you have to pay, you pay down the interest. So you don't float a new bond until you've completed the interest payments, because you don't want to have a spike in your budget. So the new bond work would come in, the interest rate will come in after you've completed paying the interest rate under the old bond. But I think maybe what would be helpful for you, and I think that those are very fair questions, Sherry. Maybe what needs to be done is for you to have a meeting, and you could see that there's a buildings and grounds survey that's done every year, every 5 years. There's a full buildings and grounds survey with more detail, and it tells you about what projects need to be done, and there is a plan in place for those replacements. I think that more districts with the 2% tax cap have been doing their work under bonding because you can't fund it through the budget with the 2% cap. But certainly, the public is certainly entitled to know what we're doing, what it cost, what the interest is that we've paid, and what effect it has on the budget. And I don't think that can be answered in this forum, but it certainly could be answered in a one-on-one meeting with you, with Olivia.
All right, I have very little free time. I walked in the door at 8 o'clock because that's when I got home, finished eating dinner, and got over here. Okay, my wife said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to aggravate some people over at the school board." Okay, she goes, "Good luck." Anyway, not really aggravate you, but I'm going to ask you questions you can't answer. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, I'm not going to apologize for it, but there are questions that you owe us. You just don't get to say, "I'm going to take your money and not tell you how we're spending it. I'm going to take your money and make it so much more expensive to live here. I'm going to take your money and then you're going to have trouble selling your house when it comes time to sell your house," which for me is not that far away. I could be out of here in 6 or 7 years. I hope to be. I hope to be out of Long Island in the next 6 or 7 years. And how am I going to sell my...
help, but just let us know.
What's that?
If there's any way we can help with that.
Getting me out of here?
Just if we, we're a helpful group.
Sure.
You're entitled to the answers to your questions. You're not entitled to an instant answer to a question that really needs more
Well,
detail.
you know, I'd almost agree with you. So I work for a company that's in the entertainment services industry. It's what I've done for 40 years, okay? We're one of the most expensive companies in the country to do business with. And when people ask me why, I could tell them. They say, "Why are your people so expensive? Why is the equipment so expensive? How come it's so expensive to do business with you?" I have an answer for them. I could tell them like that why we're more expensive, and then they go, "Oh, I get it. You're the guys that work with all the Fortune 100 companies. That's why they work with you, because you're the best." So, but when I sit here and look at a school district that's not one of the best, all right, and you're charging more than the best, I'm going to question it. Why there are not more people here in the community questioning you, I don't know why. All right? And I don't have time for a one-on-one meeting. Put it on the district website so everybody can see it. Put it on the district Facebook pages, whether it's the Glenwood Landing, Glen Head, Glen Cove, whatever, the Seacliff one. Put them out there. Put it in the next mailing to everybody's home and say, "Here's why we're spending your money. Here's how we impacted your real estate prices. This is what we're doing." Because the one thing everybody knows is when you buy a house, the taxes aren't going down. They're only going to go up. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, we're going to move on to personnel. Could I have a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions?
I'd like to make a comment, please.
Sure.
I'm referring to appointment certified probationary appointment for Risa Berg.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 3.
Okay.
I just want kudos to Peter and Rob and Albert for selecting Risa to replace Pat Kelton as the social worker in high school. Risa is just resigned as the education director for the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. She is really brilliant. She really knows her stuff regarding substance abuse, and we are blessed to have her. So I just
Okay.
wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
It was really Robin Albert.
Okay.
Tony, can I make a comment, a quick comment on that? We've had workshops over the summer sponsored by LICAD, and to the person of our faculty members and those who have attended have praised highly the work that LICAD does in terms of education and workshops for our teachers. So it's a phenomenal organization filled with extremely professional people who really know what they're doing. So.
Okay, terrific. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Okay. Let's move on to action item C, which is the approval of fall 2017 community education instructors. Could I have a motion
Motion.
and a second? Any comments or questions? All in favor? Yes? All in favor? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Move on to D, which is the reestablishment of the hourly rate for homebound tutoring. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? I
Second.
have. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Okay, let's move on to action item E, which is the appointment of the Legislative Action Committee members. These are the new members. There's a couple returning. We have Robin Charlo as a reappointment, Samir Chopra as a reappointment, Jennifer Lamond, thank you, is going to take a 3-year term. Cheryl Brown's going to have a 3-year term, and Danielle Fawcett will have a 3-year term as well. So happy to see her students, her fellow students here supporting, and friends. Huh? And siblings. So could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second. Oh, also, and we're reappointing Deb McDermott as the Legislative Action Chairperson.
I have a
So, do we have any
comment.
comments?
I
Yes.
do. I would, as the liaison to LAC, I would like us to establish a procedure for how we select members of the LAC committee. I feel that it's very inconsistent how we do it. We change it every year. And I think if we're going to have an application, the application needs to be revised. I think we need to take a look at that so it's a little more meaningful. And I think if we're going to interview candidates, we should have a procedure in place that we're going to interview everyone. And this is nothing against anyone who was selected. I just think if we have a process, we should be consistent in utilizing the process. I think it's important.
Go ahead, Joanna.
It's my recollection that for the last 2 years, we've done this the same way? No?
We have an
We
application.
interviewed everyone
No, we
last
did
year. Yes, we did. We absolutely interviewed everyone last year.
Okay,
And we did not do that this year. And it doesn't matter what we did in the past, it's that we're not consistent. So if there's an application process and people are going to fill out an application, and then we're going to make a decision on the application, I think we really need to be consistent in the process. And I think we struggled a little bit with the information on the application. So that says to me that we really need to take another look at it. So,
I would agree with you that we can review the application, but I don't think we've been inconsistent. I'm happy to review the application. I think that we need to. It's time. Dave, did you have a comment?
I did. I just wanted to say, separate from this, I think it should be noted that we are very excited about having the new people come on, but also that we had a lot of very good people who responded
We
to
did.
this. And I think it's a testament to the community that people want to come out and want to do this. And even though we can't have a 20-member committee, it should be noted that we're appreciative of the interest that people had and the fact that we had really good, willing people to choose from. So I just want to publicly thank those who applied who aren't necessarily on this list.
Great,
Mr.
thank you.
Bellotti has a-
Okay, yes, sure.
I agree with you, but I think that part of the problem is the process isn't as transparent as it should be, because some of those people who were willing to put their time in basically didn't hear anything for a month and a half, 2 months. So I think the process needs to be more clear and upfront.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, we haven't voted yet. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you very much to our community members. Thank you for applying and for being part of. Okay, let's move on to action item F, which is the approval of professional development plan. Could I have a motion?
motion.
And a second?
Second.
Second. And any comments or questions? All in favor? Okay, thank you. Action item G, approval of resolution regarding MDP Energy Management. This is to terminate the agreement. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Can I have a second? All in favor? Action item H, which is the acceptance of donation from Fresh Meadow Mechanical Service. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, other than a big thank you? All in favor? Action item I, approval of budget transfers. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions? All in favor? Action item J, which is the disposal of inventory. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor? Action item L, approval of agreement with Dan Cox.
I'm sorry.
No, you missed one. You missed K.
I missed K?
Yeah,
I don't have a K.
yes you do.
Nope.
No, here.
I don't have it on mine. Okay. I don't know, it got removed from my list. That's okay. So action item K, which is the approval of an agreement with Davidoff, Hutcher, and Citron. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Okay. Action item L, approval of agreement with Dan Cox. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions? All in favor? Action item M, approval of agreement with Marshall Cavendish Education. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor? Action item N, agreement with Pearson. Could I have a motion? And a second?
I just want to note that that contract is governed by Minnesota law, just so you know. It's a small contract, so I don't really think, and we're obviously going to pay for it. But I just want that noted so that in the future, I don't know if council reviewed this agreement, and I've raised this before. I like all agreements to be reviewed by council. On this one, it's not a big deal because it's a small contract, but, you know, I read every agreement.
Okay.
Do we, excuse me, did this one make it to Ingerman Smith? Do we know?
I don't believe it did.
Okay.
I don't think Pearson is changing the Minnesota law provision just for us, but I know when I get an agreement with anyone that I handle in my personal practice, I never ever agree to that. But that's me. But I just think everything should be reviewed by council.
Okay. All right.
Understood.
Understood? Okay.
Understood.
All in favor? Thank you. Action item O, which is the approval of an agreement with the Armory Foundation. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
I have a question. I know that we do this every year, and we host it. Right, but my question is, do other schools contribute to this? Why are we hosting it every year?
We're probably
Yeah.
sponsoring the event. We're probably, in track and field, the school usually hosts the event.
So
I'm
we
guessing.
attend other events that other people
yes.
host as well, so
Yes.
that's how it's
Yes.
reciprocated.
Yes.
So that was really my question, like, we pay for this one, but other schools pay for other ones.
Actually, the admission fees that are charged by the Armory, who gets those admission fees? Do we get those to help defray the cost? I'm just curious, now that, you know, I was looking at the other, and it occurred to me, but I forgot to email you about that. Because it may not cost as much as you think
might-
it's costing if the admission fees go to the school.
In my experience,
you might
it
wanna ask-
hasn't. In my experiences, in all of them, which has not been on Long Island, but those fees don't come back to the school district.
Okay.
They go to the
They go to the
Armory.
They go to the Armory?
Okay.
Okay.
But we will find out the answer to that for sure in this instance.
Olivia, can I suggest that you ask where the entry fees actually go to? Do they come to us because we're host?
I know it doesn't come to us, otherwise I would know about it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have questions, but all in favor? All right. Action item P, approval of agreement with the Seacliff Yacht Club. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So in the contract, line 4 says the rental fee for 2017 practice seasons is $900. Does that mean it's the practice sessions? Does that mean the whole season is 900? Is
The
it
whole
900 per
season.
session?
2 seasons, probably.
The whole season is
So
900.
the single practice season is $900 total for the whole thing?
Right. All in favor? Okay. Move to Q, which is approval of the change order with Palace Electrical Contractors. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second. Any questions?
I have, not really in particular to this, but, we're required by law in the bidding process to take the lowest bid, responsible bid, and that has not always worked out for us so well in terms of construction. But when we start getting these change orders, do we track that? Because here's the concern. Someone comes in, they lowball the bid, we give it to them, and now they're killing us with change orders. And do we do a comparison of contractors who have bid and what's included? So someone comes in slightly higher, and they don't kill us with change orders. Do we keep track of that somehow in our system, so we know?
Yes, and haven't visited all the construction site this year. I know that when the change orders come in, this is something that is really negotiated between the architect, construction manager, and the contractor, because it's usually unforeseen things that they come out with. It's not that they just when you lowball it, they hold you to the contract. These are field conditions. These are things that are hiding behind the walls that were not included in the plans and specs. So they come up during construction, and really, they just don't give it to them because they lowballed it. They give it to them because they determine at that point that this is something they deserve. And sometimes they negotiate it down, and sometimes they offset it with the allowances in the bid. So it is only when it exceeds the allowance that you see it as a change order.
Now, does our cost estimator look at the change order as well as BBS? Because your cost estimator would have an idea of what things should cost.
Yes, they do, but that's why they put in, this is all part of the contingencies that they put into the estimation, because
Right.
they know that usually when you break that wall, you're going to find something.
Asbestos, I understand. I understand things come up.
This is part of the contingency, which is included in the estimated cost of the project. Because overall, we cannot exceed the bond referendum, so it has to fall within the whole umbrella of the amount that we decided.
Even the change orders are
Yes.
part of that?
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
That's why it's very important that you bid those projects
Right.
well. And that's why even when they bid very low, we hold them to that project. They have to do it at that cost. The only time that we make an exception is if there's a field condition that they were not aware of and it was not on the plans and specs.
Okay. All in favor? That's Q. R is award of bids from Nassau County School Buildings and Grounds Association Cooperative Bid Consortium. Could I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second?
Second.
Questions? Comments? All in favor? Okay. Action item S, which is approval of resolution for type 2 action for proposed school connectivity project at 11 school district properties. There really are 11 school district properties. Could I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second? I have a second. Any questions? Mary Ann?
Is this all part of the presentation that Elliot gave us? This is the first phase?
Yeah, this is the first phase.
Okay, that's what I thought.
All in favor?
We'll have the second phase coming.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yes. All right, move on to T, approval of resolution to purchase equipment. Could I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second I have. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Move on to U, approval of intermunicipal cooperative agreement between the North Shore School District and the East Williston School District. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second, please?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor? Okay. Move on to V, which is approval agreement with Business Information Solutions. Could I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second?
Second.
Any comments? Questions?
Question.
Yes.
What services are they providing that we don't do in-house?
We have to supply textbooks to private and parochial schools. Now, we do have a group of private and parochial schools that decided to sign on to a BOCES program. The parents go to BOCES, they pick their textbooks there. But there are a number of small schools that do not have room in their facility. So we have to buy the books and distribute it to the kids. So every year we get a list of textbooks for private and parochial schools from all the private schools. We have somebody in central office who has to inventory them and then purchase them. And this is the software that we use for the in-house version of the distribution of private and parochial textbooks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Olivia. All in favor? Action item W, which is approval of purchase contracts. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Action item,
X.
sorry, I'm trying to get there. X, award of food service bids. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second.
Second.
Any comments or questions? This is probably a good place to say that we have changed the,
We've changed the software that we use to account for the food service program. We are going to a program called NutriKid, and simultaneously the vendor that we use to receive payment from parents has also changed to Schoolbox. And we are transferring, there are some parents who leave balances in their account at the end of the year.
I'm one of them.
Yes, we are going to transfer all those balances to NutriKid and everybody. And if anyone has any questions, they should call either me or the school land director.
Okay.
And we'll take care of it.
okay, thank you. I know that's not part of this, but I wanted to get that out so that it was in the public. I know it's in the letters that went home to students this week, but there's a lot of information there. So, so all in favor of the award for the food service bids? Thank you. Action Y, approval of special education services contract. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? And I have a second. Any questions? All in favor? Action item Z, which is approval of settlement agreement. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor? Action item Z, which is the approval of I'm sorry, I did that. Action item AA, approval of special education tuition agreement. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? And second, thank you, Rich. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Action item BB, approval of special education service providers. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And I have a second. Any questions? All in favor? Action item CC, approval of special education consultants. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Thank you. Questions? Comments? All in favor? Action item DD, approval of special education services, an IEP. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Action item EE, award of Northwest Nassau Transportation Cooperative bids. Could I have a motion? And a second? Any questions? All in favor? And now we'll move on to old business. Do we have any old business? Dave?
I do. I realized this a while back, but I just wanted to get an update from Peter and Rob about the status of the graffiti incident at the middle school, where we are.
Yeah. Rob, do you want to take this one, please?
It took a little research, Dave, because last year when that occurred, it was the superintendent and the middle school principal who were dealing with the issue. I was able to contact Dr. Ferris in his new location. He filled me in on what took place in the incident. There was an investigation done. I want to answer some of your questions that you posed in the email prior. There was not a clear identification of who the student or students were that were responsible for the graffiti. I will, excuse me, I will say that there was a detailed review of camera activity going into the location where the graffiti was displayed. To answer one of your questions that you had asked, would more cameras be helpful in identifying who the culprit was? The area is fully covered with cameras. The only thing you could add, which would be illegal, would be cameras in the bathroom, and we can't do that. So, but they were able to review the tapes, identify the block of time by doing quite a bit of research as to when the graffiti took place. Quite a few students, faculty members were questioned about what they saw and what they witnessed. There was a call to the police station who was reluctant to come to the school district unless the district was willing to press charges if we found the person. And Dr. Melnick was willing to press charges. So a police report was taken by the police. The detective involved was supposed to contact us after the police report was filed. There was no contact from that person. Dr. Ferris reached out to the person, and based on the information that we had available to give to them, they couldn't pursue the matter much further. There was follow-up in the district in terms of education and bringing in people from I forget the organization that came in to do the to do the training with kids.
Got it here, I think.
I'm sorry?
I think I might have it here.
Do you? I'm sorry.
Keep going.
So there was a student assembly at which Dr. Ferris presided with the person. I think it was the Anti-Defamation League, but I'm not positive about that.
I think it was the Glen Cove
I
one.
just couldn't recall the name.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was like within the week.
It
Yeah.
was the next Monday or Tuesday.
Correct. They arranged for that to happen very quickly.
Right.
The students engaged in a project of stopping hate and so on. There was actually full school, not only the assembly, but a full school action against hatred. You may have seen some of the posters that were up around the building and so on and so forth. It's unfortunate that we were not able to specifically identify who the child or children were, and that's as much as I can give you at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joanna.
I think that we have not yet resolved the liaison from the board to CASA.
Yes,
I know we've had
and
endless conversations about
we
it.
did, the last, when I was reading through the minutes, I saw that we needed to get write-up a contract from our council, and I do not have that. So I have on my list of things to do tomorrow to talk to them about that.
Okay.
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 Okay. All right. And any new,
Old business.
Old business,
At the
yeah.
last board meeting, I forget which board member had asked if there was a policy in the turnaround time between the time that students handed in papers or projects and the time that they were expected
that
to
was
be
actually,
returned.
yes, yeah.
I checked with, there is no board policy on that,
Right.
obviously, and I checked with each of the building principals. There is no policy in each of the buildings. In two of the buildings, comments are made to the faculty, reminding them that a speedy return of student work, not at the cost of providing quality feedback, but a turnaround time be made. So I just wanted to report back.
Okay. All right, thank you. And new business? Joanna, I'm sorry.
Two things. Last weekend, I attended the School Board Association Conference on Emotional Intelligence. It was specifically designed for board leadership, but I went because it's a subject that I'm very interested in. I would urge my colleagues, if they do this one again, it was very, very valuable and very informative. Is it the board's pleasure at this point that I share what has gone on in CASA for the last 2 weeks?
Please.
We've had 2 board meetings. We are participating. We will have a booth at the Glen Head Glenwood Business Association where we will be distributing information that we're getting from national organizations in terms of parenting tips and just general information. So we are participating in that. I want to outreach to the PTOs to see if we can get something going at homecoming, just to provide some information. And as a response from some of the ideas that we've gotten from the parent and community sectors, we are hosting a program on social host laws on September 18th. District Attorney Madeline Singas will be presenting during that, and we're having follow-up with a social worker who will provide parents some tools to help them deal with their children regarding that issue.
And that'll be here at the high school?
That is going to be at the community center.
At the community center, okay. And the,
Unless we get such feedback that we will need a larger facility, in which case I imagine the board will come and ask for the school's
okay,
facility usage.
okay.
Just curious, the 4 pillars, have you found the contribution strong from all 4?
I think, well, we've had some change. We've had some changes. We had a meeting the other night where we invited some of our sector leaders. We were disappointed in the turnout. It is the middle of August. I think people are off in a lot of different directions. We will be sending them out information because we want to get together very early in September. I know there are a lot of things going on, but we've gotten all these ideas and we're trying to prioritize them, get funding for them, and have them out in the public.
That's good. I mean, it's obviously, through email, I had seen the middle school group, and it was really impressive what they were doing. I wasn't sure if everyone else was.
There's been some change in the community group, but I think that's going to start to change. We really are reaching out to people who work with the youth in the community, and I've just engaged one of our coaches who is really a very energetic and committed. I think the kids love him. He would be a great role model. So we're kind of taking a second look and pulling in where we're missing some representation.
Thank you, Joanna.
I just had another question too. On the Glenwood Business Association, what is that you're attending? Do they have a night or something?
They have a fair, an annual fall fair.
Oh, okay.
It's held in the parking lot across the street from where the
They call it the farmer's market. It's in the First National Bank parking lot with the clock.
Bank parking lot. Thank you.
You think I'd know that after 12 years?
It's a great event.
Okay.
So I'm very fortunate they gave us prime tables.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank you so much for keeping us informed on what's happening. Rob?
Joanna, I just offer, if you would like to speak later on about a contact for LICAD, I think if CASA is interested in hosting parent evening sessions, again, as I don't make any money off of this, but I'm putting in a strong plug for the quality of their presentations and the knowledge of their people that I think because they're not only related to drugs and alcohol. For example, we had one today about social texting and its impact on youth and all of us, really, not just youth. But there's some great conferences. I think they offer about 40 different workshops. So
that is why that hire of Risa Berg is so important, because she's led a lot of those conferences, and I've heard her speak at conferences I've gone to, and she's just quite amazing about that.
Yeah, we had 4 speakers this year, and each one of them was better than the rest.
It's a great organization to work with.
Really is.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Oh, no.
One quick second. So I just wanted to, he left, but I wanted to I wish he had not left because I would have spoken directly to him. So it's hard for me to speak to Mr. Romano's, specific questions about the budget,
Sure.
4 days into my tenure. But I will call him tomorrow and, seek to get more, arm him with specific answers to his questions. And then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Peter, thank you.